Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I want to check in with someone who I've been reasonably impressed with from a public relations communication standpoint. And also, she's made some comments recently about a house that she owns in Fort Myers. And so we'll check in on the storm and what happened with her properties in Florida. But more importantly, I want to introduce you to Julie Rusciolelli. Is that correct?
Rusciolelli.
Rusciolelli, I apologize.
No
Julie
problem.
Rusciolelli, who is the president and founder of a boutique PR, public relations firm. It's called Maverick Public Relations. It's based in Toronto. She is a veteran of the PR business. You won't believe it, but her career has spanned 35 years in communications, and she's represented thousands of clients. We're going to talk about a little bit about this, from luxury appliances to health and wellness to automotive to high tech to consumer goods, including some companies well known like Cadillac Fairview, Mile Appliances, Simatic Corporation, Apple Canada, Joey's Restaurants, Parmigiano Reggiano Cheese, Toppers Pizza, Dyson Vacuums, Sony PlayStation, etc. She's also really advised many charities from across Canada and counseled several Ontario ministries in the public sector. Her agency recently celebrated its 23rd anniversary in June, and she is a problem solver for corporations who need to communicate a message to a direct audience. She's always behind the scenes, directing and counseling clients on their brand message. Welcome to the show, Julie. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you. I'm terrific.
So tell me, how did you get involved in the PR business and communications?
Right. Well, my trajectory into public relations was a little different than you see students coming out of PR schools today. They're getting their master's in communications. I stumbled into public relations as a temp. Back in the 80s, I got seconded to a reception job at a very large PR firm, now very large, multinational, national public relations. And I was there for 2 weeks, taking over a receptionist job. And after 2 weeks, my boss, I think, saw maybe a little spark in me and said, hey, do you want to join our firm? And I said, sure, but what do you do here? So I had no clue what was PR, what was involved, the dynamics. I didn't know anything about media relations and how to write. And that was it. That was my start in the 80s. So that's how I got into it. And I stayed. I had the best mentors in the world. They paid me to learn. So it was, and I've done every job from, taking out the trash, making coffee, answering phones to running, multi-million-dollar client accounts. So yeah. That's kind of how I started.
And you started as a receptionist, you say, but then you ended up becoming a VP of a major international PR agency. Is that correct?
Yeah. So spent 5 years with the first firm, and then I got headhunted to another multinational firm where I rose to vice president of their technology division. And I spent 6.5 years there.
But then you left it all to start your own PR agency. That's got to take a lot of guts.
Yeah, and a little naivety, I would say, a little crazy. Just like Seal said, we got to be a little crazy sometimes. And woke up one day, I think I hit my head on the, side of the bed and said, hey, I think I could be an entrepreneur. Let's give up this six-figure salary and great bonus. And I just gave it all up one day and thought I could do this on my own. And that's what I did.
Why?
Why? It's not for the money. You can talk to any entrepreneur that's successful. They don't do it for that. In fact, I gave up a lot. I remortgaged my house, a few times, to make sure I could do this venture. So you don't do it for that. I think you do it for purpose, for real personal purpose. It's you want to do things your way. You want to put a personal stamp on how you conduct client service, the kinds of people you want to hire, the kind of culture you want to build. Those were the things that really motivated me. And I lost that sense of entrepreneurialism within a big organization. I started out thinking I could make a difference and do things with my personal stamp. Corporations don't like that. So I thought, yeah, I can do this on my own. And that's why I called it Maverick. It's everybody is zigging and I'm going to zag.
So you named it after Tom Cruise.
A lot of people think that. I love him. I saw the movie. I think he's genius, but no, I did not name it after him.
Have you grown and employed other people, or are you just yourself?
No, yeah, no. At the top, I think in the mid 2000s, we're about 25 people. We're currently sitting at about 12 people, and that's the size I want to stay. So we're a
Why
nice
is,
small
why
boutique
is,
firm, and
why,
yeah,
why is 12 better than 25?
because I know what's going on. I've got much more hands-on view into client work. Clients like me in meetings. I'm not saying that I do everything, but it is my brand out there.
Mhm.
So it gives me a little more access to clients, really more intimate, a little bit more intimate with the client. And so at 25 people, I had 3-4 VPs running different sectors, and they would just call me in if they needed the face. And I don't want to be the face. I want to do the work as
You want to
well.
do the work. You want to be the PR
Yeah.
person.
Yeah, I write, I call media, I pitch stories. Sure.
Fantastic. We're going to take a break for some messages, and we're going to come back in a couple of minutes with Julie. And we're going to talk about what PR really is, because Julie thinks, and I agree with her, that a lot of people don't really understand what public relations, what good public relations is all about, how you achieve it, how you get that right media, how you establish a brand in the marketplace. And so I really want to delve into that with Julie in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Julie Rusciolelli, who is the president and founder of this boutique PR firm, Maverick Public Relations, here in Toronto. We've talked a little bit about how she got started. We talked a little bit why she left a big job as a VP in a major international public relations firm to launch her own firm. But now I really want to delve into what public relations is all about, because I think it's a critical part of what companies do, what entrepreneurs do, how you create a brand, how you create media attention, how you create business, how you solve problems when you've got problems from a public relations standpoint. And so for the next couple of minutes, we're really going to delve into what PR is. I think that many people really don't understand what PR is, and the industry is often just lumped into a category with advertising and general marketing, but it really is a separate function. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So, Julie, tell me, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing the PR industry today? It's got to be a different industry today when there aren't as many events. People are at home a lot more, now coming back to the workforce more than they may have had in the past. Social media is so prevalent versus just the 3 or 2 major channels and major newspapers in the past. Getting attention is so much more fragmented today than it would in the past. What do you do? What's the challenge?
Yeah, you've summed up our challenges right there with what you just said. The business of PR is very different than when I started 35 years ago. We had the luxury of knowing journalists by their first names and knowing their children. I'd call up a journalist from the Globe and Mail. Hey, do you have time for lunch? Want to talk to you about a client? Sure, let's go for a couple of hours. You couldn't get a journalist for lunch if you took them to California, to the best restaurants. So it's really difficult now.
Because of, ethical rules and things like that?
Oh, taking a journalist to lunch is no problem. We could do that, no problem.
But why couldn't you do that today then?
You can. They don't have time.
Oh, they just don't have time.
They don't have time. There's their time crunch like everybody else. We're not dealing with the kinds of numbers that we were dealing with before. So what's happened to the media landscape is you had a fallout of press. You'd have beat reporters covering everything from, lumber to botany to florals. Today, you don't have that. You've got one reporter covering, or maybe 2 reporters covering the business sector, whereas before you had 10 that follow the business sector. So there's less media, but it's not just that it's less media. Credibility has hurt media quite a bit in the last few years. People don't trust a lot of press. And you're seeing that with the kinds of opinion pieces that you read. And when you watch cable news, and unfortunately, I still have to watch it because I'm a news junkie. It's what I do for a living. I watch media. I consume it every day in abundance. you'll watch cable news and you start to question the validity, and news sometimes is being distorted. And so people have general population have a distrust for press. So that has affected us. Then you have social media and the rise of citizen journalism. And that happened within the last 10 years. Look at what we're doing today, Brian. Let's face it, social media is free. It's the great economy equalizer. We can all go on. We can all talk about something. It's free. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, we don't have to pay for it. The pipeline is free. Now I have a voice and I want to populate that channel. Well, guess what? You can populate it all you like, but you have to draw an audience to it. You can build a product, that's easy, but you have to bring an audience to it. And that's where PR comes in. Clients build a product, terrific. That's the easy part. Now you got to build awareness for it. And that's where we come in. That's what we do.
So let's talk about media, which you've raised just for another minute, if we could. I had a show just last week where someone said that national media in Canada is far more biased today than it was in the past. In the past, it was objective, and you knew it was objective and trustworthy with Lloyd Robertson and Peter Mansbridge and people that we grew up listening to. But that he worried that it was becoming sort of captive of the U.S. cable news columnists' opinion, very partisan, living in an echo chamber, only talking to one side, if not even less than one side of the political spectrum. Do you see that happening in Canada?
Yes, unfortunately, I am seeing it. CTV, there was a big kerfuffle there with Bell when they got rid of in a terrible way, Lisa Laflamme, and they brought in Omar. And I had a call within minutes, and somebody called me and said, "Well, he's really left. He's so left. It's not funny." And I said, first of all, how do you know this? Why do we care? He's out there talking to us about today's news. But that was the first thing the first call I got. And people are watching this. They're watching your biases. Who are you voting for? Who, are you partisan in any way? I haven't seen that. I quite like Omar, and I think he's going to do terrific. And I applaud Bell for doing that. So anyways,
I applaud Citi for hiring Lisa Laflamme to cover the royal funeral. My gosh.
Yes, that's right. No, was it? Citi TV, right? Yeah, they hired her as a special envoy, I think, or something like that. She was great, and I thought that was a great move. Man, that was really cool. I couldn't have written that one. So yeah, to your question, I think I would hope we're not going to go down that rabbit hole where Tucker Carlson is showing Photoshop.
I'll get a bow tie. I could wear a bow tie.
Yeah, but you got to get that smirk, and you got to get that funny hairdo. He showed a photo last week that was clearly photoshopped, and he passed it off as news. That's the kind of stuff where consumers go BS, and they can call it. Now, I don't know.
The problem is a lot of people don't realize it or they accept it.
Yeah.
They accept conspiracy theories. They accept the bull. They just go with it, and it's unbelievable.
It is, and it makes us have to do our own research. As consumers, we consume media, but now we have to go, is it valid? Is there integrity there? And the other problem with media, and especially when you've got social channels, right? So let's say, and I'll just pick a media, and I'm not saying that they've done it. We'll pick Global TV or Global. So Global has their newscasts, right? But they also have their feeds. They also have their social feeds. And that's where you can talk about breaking news quickly on your social feed. But sometimes you get it wrong. So a lot of media want to be fast, but not correct. And that's the problem. So that message is out there and it's wrong. And now they got to play catch up and correct it. And many people don't see the correction. And that's what's happening with social media. To be fast is to be better. And I'd rather they take it slow and get the facts right. So you see a lot of that right now in the media.
So let's talk about brands. How, I guess, number one, give me an example or a couple of examples of what you think are really great brands, corporations that have built great brands. And then number two, tell me, if you were advising a company, how do you build a great corporate brand?
Well, I could be biased and talk about some of my clients, but I'm not going to. I think I'll just pick some brands that I quite like, and I think they're doing a great job of it. And I quite like Canadian Tire. I'm seeing what they're doing. I've always liked the brand. I love their Canadiana roots. They're funny without being cheeky. I think Canadian Tire has done a better job at their supply chain. That used to be called Crappy Tire.
Yeah.
You'd buy something from there and it'd break 3 days later. And I think they've overcome that. That was a big hurdle for them. And I think what they've done is messaged the brand correctly. I believe they've just realigned their advertising. They got a new ad firm. So we're going to see some interesting things from them. So I like the brand. I think what they stand for is true, a lot of smarts, a lot of humor. I can't wait to see their Christmas commercials. They always come out with great ad campaigns. But from also a PR perspective, I think it's a smart company. I think from a Canadian company, we should be proud.
Okay, I agree with that, because actually I shop at Canadian Tire, and I used to probably call them Crappy Tire as well. What do they do, or what do they do to establish that Canadiana roots and that higher quality value?
I think they have smart CSR programs. Their corporate social responsibility programs are smart. They're involved with kids and with sports. They take a stand there, and I like that. And again, it matches their brand product line, if you will. Let's face it, the first bike that your father ever bought you or your mother ever bought you was from Canadian Tire. And so there's that smart connection that they've made between children, parents, and their product line. And I like that. And they don't do it in a self-serving way, like, I want to sell you more bikes. At the end, they got to sell more. As we say, we got to sell more bread. We got to sell more product. They do, but they do it in a real genuine way. So I think the connection is smart.
Okay. So, I think their Christmas commercials that have that establish those kinds of, what am I going to get? That present family orientation, et cetera, are great. There's no question about that. I got to ask you, just this past week, because of the National Day of Reconciliation, Hudson's Bay, another big Canadian company, has a Canadiana kind of brand. I saw in a couple different newspapers did a wrap around the front of the newspapers to announce that that iconic blanket, multicolored iconic blanket that's associated with Hudson's Bay for so long, all the proceeds from that, I'm not sure actually, was it all the proceeds or all the profit? I can't remember what it said, but are going to go to Indigenous service organizations. What do you think of that PR? Was that a stunt? Was that a good move to come out on a day of national reconciliation and wrap newspapers with such an announcement? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I saw that. It was all over my social feed as well. I have those products with those colors. I think I have the blanket somewhere. I don't know. I got to process that, Brian. At first blush, I like it. I think it's smart. They want to get in that conversation, if you will, with Indigenous groups and giving back. I don't know. I think it's smart. I like it. I don't think it feels cheesy, and I don't think it feels, I don't feel like it's a corporate grab for attention. I think there's a genuineness there from the Bay. Let's face it. They are one of our, I think they are still Canadian. I hope, I don't know. I'm losing track. I know Tim Hortons is a South American company now, so I'm losing track at who's being bought. But they have indelible roots to this country, and so this is part of perhaps their way of giving back. I think it's 100% of the proceeds. I read that recently. Would I go out and buy it because they're doing it? I don't know. If you don't like the look and feel of the product, then you're not going to buy it. So I like it. I'd like to see how it moves forward.
I personally thought it was brilliant, because I do think that blanket and those colors identify with something more than just Hudson's Bay. You looked at it, you saw Hudson's Bay, but you thought about sort of Canada of 200 years ago or 150 years ago. You thought about the fur traders. You thought about trading with natives, and so I thought it had a real connection. And to say that it's really not ours anymore, it's the Indigenous people's. I thought was brilliant. Whether it works and sells more blankets, I'm not sure, but
right. I don't know.
I liked it.
Yeah. Yeah. At
You know,
at first glance, I liked it. Yeah.
I always thought that a brand needed a tagline, so that the swoosh by itself wasn't enough. It was just do it, that ended up being important. I worked for the Walt Disney Company at one point in time, and the happiest place in the world was critical. What makes a brand? Is it the advertisement that Canadian Tire does that creates that connection to families and giving that you mentioned? Is it the swoosh or the golden arches, or the bitten out apple, or is it a tagline that really resonates with people?
And you missed a part of it. It's everything, and it's your conversation to your consumer. It's every touch point in an organization is what your brand is. From customer service, you have a bad customer service experience, I'm going to tell you right now, you're probably looking for another company to work with. Yeah. Had a guy on the phone. One of my employees spent I want to say 2 hours, but I think it was 2 days with one of the telephone carriers. And by the end of it, he was like, just forget it, I'm switching. So, you can have a bad customer experience, and that's part of your brand. So it isn't just a logo. It isn't just a tagline. It's every touch point along that chain with consumers. That's your brand. You go into a store and you have a shitty experience, you're not going back there again. So that's part of it. I think Nespresso, which is owned by Nestle, is bloody brilliant. You go in there and it's an experience from the first moment you walk in to the moment you walk out. They've done a beautiful job at store, at experience, at sustainability, making a great product called coffee. Beautiful. That to me is a wonderful example of how they manage their brand perfectly. Is Nespresso for everybody? No, but who it's for, it's perfect. And I love that. I love that brand. I love how they've done it.
So how do you deal with a brand that's in crisis? You mentioned telephone carriers. There was a telephone carrier this past summer that had a big outage. That caused huge amounts of problems. And some people said they took too long, but then you earlier had said, take the time and make sure it's right. What do you do if you're the PR expert and you get a call from a company, a brand in crisis? What do you do?
Albert Einstein had a great quote, and I'm going to paraphrase it here. He said, if I had 20 hours to solve a problem, I would spend 19 of those hours defining it and 1 hour solving the problem. So we've got to take our time to understand what the problem is before we start throwing tactics at the issue. Too many PR people, too many ad people let's write a press release. Let's do an event. Let's get together with, municipal representatives and tell them our story. Wait, hold. Let's find out what the problem is. So for me, the Rogers issue is first things first. I don't think comms has to come into the issue, but we got to find out what the problem is first. That's why it took them so long to come out with a statement. They were trying to figure out not what to say, but what the problem is.
What actually went wrong? That's the problem, is they didn't know.
They didn't know. So what are they going to do? Put a microphone in front of the CEO? All right, here's what's happening. No, he didn't know. So I can't really blame them for that. I think they took the right approach. They took the Einstein approach. Let's spend some time figuring this out.
So now, number one, take the time to figure out what's wrong. Okay, what else?
What's wrong. Once you dissect the problem, now, first of all, you should have a crisis plan before the poop hits the fan. So if corporations don't have a crisis plan in place, that's their first problem. It's kind of like insurance. Everybody hates paying for it, but you love it when you have it. So let's get a crisis plan first before it becomes one. Let's manage an issue. Issues become crisis when you screw up the issue.
Right.
So that's number one. So let's get a plan in place. If we don't have a plan in place, look at what the problem is and start to look at the stakeholder groups that are affected the most. Prioritize those groups. So that's what I would do. I would look at, I don't give a crap about shareholders at this point. They're not important to me. I have to look at who's being affected first. So that's kind of what we do. And then look at your communications toolbox. How are we going to communicate it? And what are we going to communicate? And start working on the narrative. Narrative is key. You want to come out often, and you want to come out, even if you don't have new information after the first statement, come out anyways. We're seeing this with what's happening in Florida. They're coming out regularly. They're coming out with some new news. And if they don't have new news, they'll come out with a statement. And I think that's important. Communicate often. Look at your channels. How are you communicating? Through what channels? Through social, through TV, through radio, through a statement, through the press. You know, how are we communicating? So that's kind of a few first steps. I'm giving you a very easy answer to that, but that's how I would look at it.
So I was told over communicate. You're agreeing with that?
Yeah, over communicate, especially in these kinds of crises, especially for life and death situations. You want to come out often. Rogers outage, I think they did a good job when they did come out, and they did fix the problem. It was 24 hours for me. I think others were longer.
Yeah. What do you mean by create a narrative?
Create a story. You gotta map out, what are you saying? So the narrative is important. So it's literally the story that you want to communicate.
But by story, you don't mean a fiction story. You mean a description of what actually happened that holds together, that makes sense.
Yeah. Our story, and I use story as fact. We want to create a narrative, and then you got to pick your spokespeople. You know, who are you out there? You saw what happened with Rogers. It was the top of the food chain went out. Yeah. This wasn't some VP of operations that came out. This wasn't no tech guy. You know, this was, their CEO, their president, their guy. I mean, he had to come out there and do that. You saw that, when you had the listeria in, I think it was, I want to say Maple Leaf Foods with the listeria, with the, in the meat, who came out? Their president came out and said, we killed people. Here's what we're going to do. Here's the supply chain. Here's how we're going to fix the problem. So it has to come from the top in those situations.
So the buck stops here kind of attitude.
For sure.
We're chatting tonight about public relations and how critically important it is, and how you create a brand and how you keep that brand going. With oh my gosh, I apologize. How do I pronounce your last name, Julie?
Julie Rusciolelli.
Julie Rusciolelli at Maverick Public Relations. Do you have a website if people want to contact you and ask you for some advice?
Yeah, for sure. You can find us at www.wearemaverick.com.
Wearemaverick.com. I love that's creating a brand just by itself. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Julie Rusciolelli in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting tonight about building a brand and maintaining that brand in the face of some crisis with Julie Rusciolelli, who is the head of Maverick Public Relations. And your website, I love your website. It's what is again?
Wearemaverick.com.
Wearemaverick.com. What an incredible website. That's fantastic. The pandemic has changed things fairly dramatically. How has the pandemic changed what you do in PR?
Yeah, so I got asked that question just the other day. I was being interviewed recently, and it's two-pronged. So COVID, the pandemic, was a good 2 years of our lives, if you want to say, taken away or disrupted, if you will. I would say there's a flip side. There's two sides to the coin on this one. One, there was a big reset, and I hate using that word, but there was a reset from a PR perspective, from a work culture perspective. If you told me in 2019 that you're going to make your staff work remotely and they'll be productive, I would have told you you're smoking the drapes again. I wouldn't have believed you. I wouldn't have believed that remote work was even possible and that you could get strong productivity. So I think the pandemic was a great awakening for a lot of us in the service industry that's been around for 100 years, that you can work remotely, that you can connect with employees, that you can connect with clients. You don't need an office space per se to do good work. So COVID kind of reshaped my thinking on work-life balance. So that was a good byproduct for me when it comes to the pandemic. Really strong. I love it. So I've got a hybrid work situation. I have my employees in 3 days a week. 2 days they work from home. I have a happy workforce. I have a happy life. It's all good and it's working. Now, the bad side of the pandemic, we lost business. I mean, it hurt us financially. There's no question. And, it doesn't, hurt the bottom line. I had to freeze wages. I couldn't hire. If somebody left, I didn't rehire. So yeah, it took a toll on us.
You had a crisis that you had to deal with at Toronto Eaton Centre. Can you tell us about that instance and how you handled it?
Yeah, there was a number of years ago. We've been the agency of record for Cadillac Fairview for more than 10 years at that point. And we managed a lot of, not properties, we did a lot of PR for the corporation and also for the properties, for Cadillac Fairview, for Toronto Eaton Centre, for Sherway, for Fairview, for the TD Centre downtown. So we did a lot of PR for different properties. Eaton Centre is very exciting. We went through, I think it was $120 million revitalization campaign. And this was, it was beautiful, reconstruction of the center. But one of the coolest things that they did was the food court, and they called it the Urban Eatery. That was really cool. It was the first one, I think, in Canada where the cutlery and the plates were all recyclable. Like, you didn't get plastic stuff. And you had a food court where you'd get your plate and your cutlery, and then you would, put it on some kind of gurney and it would go and get rewashed and used again. That was the first of its kind back then. So it was really cool. We did a great launch. We had tons of press. It was amazing. A few months later, somebody got shot in the food court and someone died in the food court. And we had to shut down the entire center. And that happened on a Saturday night. So I'm driving to dinner with my daughter, and phone call comes from the client and says, we've just had a shooting. And I was like, what, where did you have the shooting? And Toronto Eaton Centre, we've shut down. So we mobilized really super quickly. My vice president was there along with 2 other staff members, literally 24 hours within the center. Again, back to research. What's the problem? What's happened? How do we communicate? Where do we communicate? Et cetera. So we closed down the center. First thing we did was we had to call all the tenants. So this was before we had a lot of their emails, so we old fashioned, old school here, Brian, call all the tenants and tell them not to come in Sunday. So that's one of the first things we did. Getting reports with with police, obviously. It's an investigation. So we're not out there talking about the investigation. That's up to local police and local authorities. But we had to calm the nerves of consumers and restore the Cadillac Fairview brand. And within 3 days or within 2 days, they were open, and we were back up to 100% capacity within 4 days. So imagine a shooting has happened, and within 4 days, you've got consumers coming back in droves. And that was our call to action. Calm everybody down, tell them what's going on, communicate regularly, and say, we're open for business again. Come on back. And that's what we did.
It's a great summary, and it's a good story. Thank you very much for sharing. You had, your own personal crisis when you were sued by the agency that you left. Tell us about that and how you handled that.
A lot of alcohol. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, they came after me with a vengeance. It was
for how much?
Oh, $5 million.
$5 million.
Yeah. So
And what, tried to stop you from competing with them?
absolutely. They were really angry.
Did you take clients or something like that? What was their contention? What was their argument?
Yeah. So here's what happened. I mean, this is a long time ago. This was in 1999. And so it's a bit of ancient history, waters under the bridge. But, at the time, there's a lot of anger and a lot of resentment and that kind of thing, not on my part. So when I left the company, I had a non-solicit. I didn't have a non-compete. So non-compete and non-solicit contracts are very different. And first of all, non-competes are very hard to enforce anyways, but I never had one. I had a non-solicitation, which was fine. So when I started my business, I didn't take anybody. I didn't call any clients. I didn't call any staff. I just went out, put my shingle up. We are Maverick. Come on down if you want to work with me. And clients came looking for me. So the first thing I did is I kind of figured maybe my ex-employer might be a little litigious here. I don't know, but I have a gut feeling, and my gut feeling's pretty good. So every client that left my previous agency and sought me out, I had them sign a paper. And I had them sign a paper that said, Julie did not call me. She did not seek me out. I came to her. I went looking for her, and I had those signed. And I said, look, guys, if you want to work with me, you got to sign this. And they were all willing to sign that document. That's the first thing I did. Second thing I did, if employees called me, ex-employees, I didn't take them on full time. They worked contract for me. I said, I can't pay you full time. You're not going to come on as a full-time employee because I don't have the money to pay you. And that's what they did. And they left on their own volition. They didn't like that. And they thought that I was the aggressor and I was the instigator. And so they sued me. And they sued me, and they sued all of the employees that came to me.
Oh my God.
So I took care of their legal bills. I represented them and represented my company. And it was 4 years in discovery. And after that, they went, man, this is taking a long time. At this point, I had millions already in fees that we had racked up. We grew very quickly from 1999 to about 2003. And at that point, my lawyer said, either we go to court or we give them some F-off money. And F-off money, my dog is barking.
What's F-off money?
I can't swear. It's, F-U blank K money.
Okay.
Yeah. So
and so you gave them some F-off money.
Yeah, I gave them some F-off money. By this point, we had good cash flow coming into the company. We were at 15 people at this point. We're doing very well. And my lawyer said, look, let's just get rid of these guys. And I said, so we settled. But here's the best part. My lawyer goes to their lawyer, look, we're going to settle, but you can never come after her again. You've got to sign this thing that says she can do whatever she wants at this point. And they did. And I went after every single client they had.
and got some, if not a lot.
Oh, yeah, damn right I did. So, you want to play with me? Let's go.
One of my favorite books is a James Clavell book. I think it was Shogun, and the protagonist in there said, no, it was Noble House. The protagonist said, you always need to have F-off money. Whether it's to leave a boss that you don't like, leave a job you don't like, leave a spouse you don't like, whatever it is, you always need to have a little bit of F-off money. And I've always remembered that.
Yeah.
I haven't always followed that rule, which is a mistake of mine, but I've always liked the comment. Fort Myers, you've got a house there. Tell me, is the house okay?
Yeah. As far as we know, our house was 2 inches away from being completely flooded.
2 inches?
2 inches, Brian. The water came up about 7 feet. We're up on a bit of a hill. Our house is built a little higher up. So it came up to the mailbox down the street. So our mailbox is about 4 or 5 feet high. Some houses got completely flooded across the street, literally across the street from us. They're completely flooded. So we missed it. Our garage is flooded. We have 2 cars down there. They're fine. They should be fine. We were told there's a lot of waterproof stuff. And I don't know anything about cars, but I was told your cars should start. We might have to remove a part here or there, or the battery of such. We came out fairly unscathed, but unfortunately, Fort Myers it's devastated. There's carnage. There's carnage down there. There's lives lost. It's terrible, Brian.
It really is. I've got some businesses down there, and the impact is incredible. And just the people, you know, I've got lawyers and brokers and consultants that I haven't been able to contact, or that contact me and say, you know, I'm alive, but I'm cleaning up, and I'll talk to you in a week. And so it's really impacted people's lives fairly dramatically. There's no question about it. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back in just 2 minutes with some concluding comments about brands. Building brands, keeping brands, and what you got to do. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Briancrombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Julie Rusciolelli of Maverick Public Relations. We've been talking about public relations, building a brand, communications, over-communicate, having the narrative, don't rush to communicate. Make sure you get your facts straight first, but then communicate, over-communicate, etc. Julie, if you had to sort of sum it all up and provide people with a message of public relations and how important it is, how would you do that? What would you say? What's your message?
Yeah, I thought about this question, and I kind of wrote down a couple of thoughts, Brian. So I'm just gonna read to your audience what I think is most important when we think about brand and personal brand and communication. So I would impress upon those listening to you that whether you're working in a big or small company, that brand reputation is a critical component of marketing. And it's more than just a logo. For companies, as I said before, it's how they communicate, how they observe and treat the environment, how they treat employees, what they post on social media, and being aware of the supply chain in an organization. Brands today have a responsibility to give back to communities they serve, and not just back to shareholders. Companies today are being judged on their brand purpose. CSR, especially for large corporations, needs to be communicated. We are also living in a culture where diversity is celebrated, and being inclusive should be top of mind at every organization. But if I take this message to a personal brand, your own personal brand, if you're managing your personal brand online, manage it closely, manage it and watch it every day. It lives forever online. Whatever you write, whatever you post lives forever. So your future employees could be on there, and your future employer could be on there. So watch everything you write and everything you do. I think PR plays a mission critical role in communicating a brand's purpose. And that's what I do every day for clients.
Julie, thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us your thoughts. Remind us again of the website they can go to if they want to check you out and maybe hire your services.
Yes, of course. We work with companies big and small, from napkin to launch. We do a lot of that kind of work. So if you're looking for some help, we are at wearemaverick.com.
wearemaverick.com. Maybe I'll just end with a couple of quick comments. I like your comment about over communicate. I love your comment about get the facts straight before you start communicating. And I think that the comment about it's got to have a narrative, it's all got to fit together, is critically important. Social responsibility, diversity, inclusion. The big trend right now, in addition to sort of CSR, corporate social responsibility, is ESG, environment, society, and governance. And I think those are things that you've got to think through and have. But the other two things that one that you mentioned and one that we didn't really talk about, you made a comment about be prepared for crises by thinking about what would happen if something happened and thinking ahead. And I think that's critical. I think the other thing, and I actually do speeches on this, is thinking ahead of time about what that brand is that you want to create. And I think that, you've given the example of Canadian Tire. I gave you the example of Hudson's Bay. Clearly, those were thought about ahead of time. And also for your own person as an individual, I think you need to think about what your brand vision is. It's sort of the future self, whether it be a company or an individual. You should sit down and think about how you want to be perceived, how you want to be thought of, what you want your brand vision to be, and then be proactive in creating it and communicating it. Julie, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Brian. Thank you.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for joining us. I remind you, as I'm trying to build my brand, that we're on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. You can hear me every night at 6 p.m. on 960 a.m. if you're in Toronto or west of Toronto, or you can stream me online from anywhere, including Florida, at www.saga960am.ca. All my podcasts and videocasts are always on my website, briancrombie.com. I post all the videos on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. And all the podcasts are on Apple, Audible, Speakeasy, etc., wherever your podcasts are available. Thanks for joining us. Have a great evening, everyone. Julie, thank you so much. Be Maverick. Go Maverick.